Hello, everyone. If we could ask you to take your seats, please. We're going to get started. Welcome back. This is the last plenary of the day, a very long and full 2 days. I'm Linda Fry. If I haven't met you yet, I apologize. I head the OGP support unit, or secretariat for OGP. And it's been a really thrilling couple of days for me. It's just so amazing to see all this come together after many months. And I think partly what's been so fun is the unscripted moments of this summit, right? And that's kind of the point of open government. Some of those uncomfortable moments are actually what open government is all about. So we're thrilled that you got to be a part of this. We're going to have a final plenary here today over the next hour. I'm going to start with a couple of quick housekeeping things, as we've been doing. Again, you should all know by now, OGP 13 is the hashtag. If you're using interpretation, channel 1 is English, 2 is Spanish, 3 is French, 4 is Arabic, and 5 is Russian. Hopefully by now you know where the fire exits are. And with that, I'd like to get us started. And it is my great pleasure to introduce for our final keynote speech of the day, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who is the inventor of the World Wide Web. He is also very much an integral part of this community as the co-founder of the Open Data Institute and the founder of the Web Foundation. Sir Tim.
Thank you, Linda. Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me to speak. Thank you all for coming here to my hometown to talk about open data. I think this has been exciting for me because I suppose along with a lot of people, a lot of you, I've been pushing for open data for a long time in different ways, and to see this amount of energy is wonderful. We're at exciting times. There's a tremendous buzz here. For those who are at the other events at the Open Data Institute later in the week, there's an exciting buzz there. If we're going to look at where we are, we've got the Open Data Barometer, which was just launched at opendatabarometer.org, or Google for it. There is in a way, it gives us a status. And you can see that we have of the various countries which it looks at, and it assesses in different areas. You can see that there's a significant amount of open data out there. And at the same time, you have to realize from talking to anybody who's involved in it, or from looking at your own agenda, that we've come such a small way compared to the way we have got to come all together. So there are, in a way, there are some wonderful things. There are some great stories. Unfortunately, there are some data sets which have been published and have led to some real gains and so on. And still, we have some huge challenges. One of the great things that happened relatively recently in the UK is that, which a couple of years ago I never thought we'd get to, and that is there's a database of databases which includes the unpublished ones. So and rather than just waiting to get all the data we could, there is now this sort of overall database. So you can see for the databases which are not in there, and you can go to the website as assessors and comment on why you think the government should give particular importance to each one. So I think that sort of feedback, that sort of community feedback is very valuable, and also it gives you a sort of feeling for how far you are along. I think it's challenging still in lots of ways. When you talk to people in these corridors, you talk to people with the same mindset. Everybody excited about the transparency of open government. Everybody's excited about the economic value of open data. But then you go home and you have to persuade people who are not yet of that mindset. You come across people, for example, you may come across people where the only reason that they really understand about open data is as though it's something to hold them accountable, as though it's something to blame them for doing things wrong. They only see the transparency side and they're a bit frightened of it, and they don't understand the economic benefit. For me, in a way, yes, I think the transparency of open government is really important. But I think when we've built on that and we've got transparent government, then building an efficient country, an efficient world with all the data interchange is what gets me excited, because that's when That means when I'm basically a computer programmer, that means I can do my job. That means I can build stuff. That means we can communicate. That means that we can build value. We can get economic value. So for me, always the most exciting piece of it at the end of the day is economic value. But that mindset, there was some questions earlier today of how do you explain to somebody who wants to sell the data piece by piece, who wants to just sell it in small quantities instead of releasing it openly. Now, there was a nice story I heard a couple of days ago from Transport for London, saying that they'd actually done an analysis and they found that the return on investment for every pound that they put into open data, they'd actually analysed how much more efficient all the apps for London Transport made everybody, and they worked out that the return on their investment was £45 for every pound that they invested. 45 to 1 return on investment for the open data in that case. So sometimes people can measure it, but most of the time you just can't. So one of the big challenges in getting this mindset change is for people to realize that by releasing their little bit of data, how it'll help people that they never know. And it'll be combined with other data sets that they've never really heard of. And that it will be when it's combined with those other data sets, maybe in other fields, maybe in other countries, then it'll be a huge benefit to people that they still may never know. So that's, with 25 years ago, it was hard for people to realize the value of putting a web page up, but people got it fairly quickly. It's more complicated, but very important for people to understand that mindset change when it comes to open data. So one of the things I think which has certainly come up today, and it was great to hear David Cameron's announcement this morning about exposing the beneficial ownership of corporations. This open data is not just about governments. Yes, okay, this is an open government data partnership, but it's corporate data as well. So it's about so everything, a lot of things that apply to governments apply just as well to corporations. Sometimes it's more important for them. Sometimes in some areas the corporations are bigger and more powerful in a way it seems than the governments. The corporations are multinational. So openness of these huge organizations which really control a lot of our world is very important. And of course the government is in a position to hold corporations responsible. And this openness, I hope we'll see in the future years more and more about open corporate data as well as open government data. Although I looked at some countries, I must say, and sometimes the corporations and the governments are quite close together. Sometimes it's difficult to tell which is which. But, sorry, that was one thing I would point out has also come up, that it's no longer possible for me to put in different categories all the different types of openness I'm pushing for, like the open standards and the open access to academic papers and the open access to government data and so on, and the pushing for the open internet. I've been pushing to keep the web open, of course, for 24 and a half years, but now, when you're looking at all this open data, obviously, as many people have commented, it's all very well being open by providing data, but you do have to use the technical infrastructure. You can't, being open by providing data by nailing it to a tree in a forest is not going to cut it. Being open by making it available to anybody who comes to a place where you have a filing cabinet in your office is not going to cut up. It's got to go, we've got this internet thing, it's got to go up on the web. And so the whole thing really depends on the web. It's got to go up on the web, by the way, in an open format so that everybody can read it, and so that posterity, so that our grandchildren go back and see what it was without having to try to load some weird program. So all this depends on putting stuff on the web, using it in a reasonable way. And so, of course, it is really important that we also, at the same time, respect that infrastructure. And I think there's been a lot of good discussion recently about respecting the infrastructure. I used to just call it basically, don't block me, don't spy on me. And I've been talking about this. No, I don't want censorship, and I don't want spying. And people said, yeah, okay, Tim doesn't want people to spy on the internet. But it was a sort of until the recent revelations of what the US and the UK have been doing, that I don't think it really connected. Sure, it connected the sort of don't block me, connected for a lot of people in Egypt when the Mubarak regime disconnected Egypt from the internet for a bit. Then I think people started thinking, whoa, wait a moment, who can disconnect me from the internet? And then they started to realize, perhaps a little bit more subtly, wait a moment, I've been connected to the internet, but am I connected to all of it? And so people in different countries are trying to find ways of figuring out, wait a moment, other pieces of the internet which I'm being quietly led away from? Is my search engine only giving me results which my country government really is happy for me to see? Is another part of the internet which I'm not being shown, either for government, political reasons, or personal reasons? And of course, censorship, the word censorship, in a way, horrifies a lot of people. They feel it's very bad. But in many cases, the spying can be worse. If an oppressive regime spies on what you're doing without blocking it, that can be a lot worse, because you can reveal to the people that are spying on you who it is you're communicating with. And so if you're in an oppressive regime which wants to round up any opposition, which does not allow opposition, we'll find that the internet can give them a very powerful tool for finding all those people and then very cleanly mopping them up and putting them in jail, or worse. So in a way, the censorship and spying are you can't really separate one from the other, in that when you spy, it has a chilling effect, which suddenly dramatically affects the fact that people use the internet at all. So the freedom of expression is blocked indirectly through the chilling effect. And there are a bunch of NGOs putting together a statement on this and one of the on the web. One of the things it quotes is Brazil's President Dilma Rousseff recently talking to the United Nations. In the absence of the right to privacy, there can be no true freedom of expression and opinion, and therefore no effective democracy. And it is true that it is democracy as a whole that depends on what we're now starting to call internet rights, the basic human rights as applied to the age of the internet. So, in conclusion, looking at this, the state we're in, here we are with this tremendous enthusiastic burst of energy with the OGP and everything around the world in the direction of openness, in the direction of countries becoming more efficient, just being easier to do business, because all this data about how the world works, how countries work, is becoming available. But then at the same time, we find all kinds of really, in each country, all kinds of difficult issues where it's really, it just takes a huge amount of energy, which all of you will have to exert when you get back to keep the momentum going, to keep data set after data set, with each new data set coming across a new agency, a new person who feels they need to own it, and a new person and a new reason out of the 101, 102 reasons why I can't put my data set on the web. So there's going to be a lot of effort, you have to put in to do it. At the same time, you feel that the rug is being pulled from under your feet, because the folks who actually run the internet are spying on it or having it spied on, and as a result, the whole thing is being threatened, and the governance of the internet is being sort of shaken and called into question. So, exciting times, challenging times. I'm looking forward to the next year. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Sir Tim to stay up with me, because we're now going to announce the winner, the crowd favorite of the Bright Spots competition, which I thought was really quite fun. It was another experiment. A lot of things about OGP are an experiment, but I thought this one turned out pretty well. So with that, and a drum roll, we received 5,384 votes via the online system from here and around the world from folks who had watched the live stream. And the winner is Vivian Suerte Cortez from the Philippines. You could go to the middle and shake her hand.
Congratulations.
Thank you. This is coming from
Okay,
I'm the deputy auditor general.
okay. You're all together?
Our partner.
No imposters? Okay, well done. Congratulations.
Get in a photo with them. Get in a photo. Go get in a photo with Sir Tim.
You should join us.
Yes, I'll join you too.
That was a surprise.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Just fill up. Okay, after all that excitement, can there be more? We'll see. I would now like to introduce again Minister Kuntoro of Indonesia, who has just told me I should call him Pak Kuntoro, so that was a highlight of my day. Pak Kuntoro, thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
So Pak Kuntoro is going to make an announcement about something that's coming next year. So please.
Thank you, Laura. First, I'd like to congratulate Vivian Cortez from the Philippines as the winner of this bread spot competition. And that bread competition is actually a beginning of our effort to have a competition of bright ideas, good ideas. Because when it comes to OGP, the end result is people's welfare, whether it's increasing or not increasing, or whether OGP does not give any effect at all. So we want to have bright ideas. We want to have new innovations. New innovation that is ambitious. Now the question is, how do we measure this ambition? How do we sustain this ambition? And that's the essence. If we want OGP to sustain, then basically all the collection of new ideas, innovative ideas should be there. So I'm very glad, I'm thrilled that I was asked to launch the Open Government Award of 2014. So that's a very special award. This award is basically will be given to those who come up with new ideas, for sure implementable, operational, and that's why each country that wants to promote their ideas, their approaches, their instruments should go hand in hand with one of their local CSOs to validate whether that approach is already in operation and indeed getting the objective that was planned. Starting next year, we're going to have this kind of competition, annual competition, and every year have its own theme. For the year 2014, the theme will be citizens engagement. I love that. That's a code of the citizen engagement. We will obviously provide much more detail on the application and selection process for months to come. And we sincerely hope that every OGP country will get excited and decide to participate. How do we do this? Each OGP participating country will be able to submit one application to the awards competition. And, as I already mentioned, each applicant will be required to include one CSO as a partner. Why? We need somebody else to validate its claims. and also as a partner in implementing the program. I don't have to mention that the process of selection will be very transparent. That's the whole essence of OGP. So let's not worry about that. I do hope that this brief announcement has piqued your interest. I believe that winning an award is not the intention, but the most important one is that we can provide improved services to the public. That's the end goal of all our effort. I do hope that we will start thinking today about how to do just that, to catalyze change, to spur progress, to create impacts, and to transform societies. With that, I formally launch OGP Prize Competition Prize 2014. Thank you.
Thank you, Pakantoro. I look forward to working with you on that in the coming year. It will be a lot of work.
Yeah, you'll be busy.
Let's have you sit right.
Which one? This one?
Yeah, just.
Okay.
So at this point, I want to invite our final group of speakers, our final panel, to the stage, and our moderator for this discussion amongst the incoming co-chairs of the Open Government Partnership will be Nairi Woods, who is the Dean of the Blavatnik School of Government at Oxford. Yeah, please, Nairi, come on up. And I'd like to ask the other three incoming co-chairs of OGP to join Pakantoro on stage. We have Rakesh Rajani, Twaweza. Undersecretary Julian Alfonso Olivas from Función Pública in Mexico. And our new civil society co-chair, Sunita Kaimal of Revenue Watch Institute. Welcome, Sunita. And before we turn it over to Nairi, we're going to ask the Right Honorable Francis Maude, Minister for the Cabinet Office, who you all know well by now, to make a few comments to introduce this discussion. Thank you, Francis.
Linda, thank you very much. This is almost the last occasion you'll have to listen to me, I'm afraid, but this is the home straight so far as I'm concerned. And I just want to say a very quick word before we start the discussion with the incoming chairs. And just to say this, really, it's been for me a huge honour and a privilege to have had the lead government chair of the partnership over the last year. It's been a big responsibility. We've taken it very seriously indeed. I just want to say a quick word. First of all, to thank Linda and her support team for what they've done over this year and continue to do. I misspoke yesterday. I misspoke yesterday because I said that Linda comprised 25% of the burgeoning bureaucracy that is the support unit. In fact, it's 33%, so even more austere than I had remembered. The work over this period has been incredibly uplifting and inspiring, talking to colleagues both in government and civil society across the world, seeing the challenges that people face, the innovation, the determination. As I said yesterday, the role of the reformer, both in civil society and sometimes in government, can be a tough one. And it's important that we draw solidarity from each other. It's incredibly important. Our aim was, when we took on the lead chairmanship, to focus on deepening rather than massive spread of membership. In fact, the membership has grown, but in a rigorous way. And it's deep and solid. We have, I believe, now a sound foundation to go for the future. And so I'm very confident now that the incoming chairs will do a fantastic job over this coming year and the years ahead. We stand ready to give support from the British government to the co-chairs in the time ahead, as indeed the American government, the US government, and the Brazilian government, as the first two co-chairs, gave unstinting support to us. It's very important that we keep the continuity and learn from the experience that there's been. So for me, it's a huge continuing interest and commitment for our government and for me personally, and it's been a great honour to have been part of it. And now I'll hand over to your incoming co-chairs, Pak Kuntoro, my good friend with whom I've worked so closely, Rakesh, who has also been there from the very outset. I sat next to Rakesh at the launch event in New York 2 years ago when we both spoke as part of the launch. And Minister Olivas, who it's been a pleasure to work with more recently, and Sunita Kaimal. This is a formidable team, and we look forward to the OGP going from strength to strength. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very honoured to be facilitating this final conversation. The Open Government Partnership has at its core a very simple idea that if governments are going to get better at what they do, they need high quality feedback. Anybody who's ever learned a sport or a musical instrument knows that it's not enough just to practice. You need really high quality feedback. And that's what this partnership is about. It's about sharing good ideas. It's about holding each other to account. It's about raising the bar for government expectations. And as Minister Kuntoro spoke of this coming year's Open Government Partnership, it's about ensuring that civil society, that citizens have the information and space to keep giving feedback to their governments, even when that's uncomfortable. This is the way that together, it's what brings us all together in this room. It's the way that we all believe that government can get better. And this closing panel is about where we've got to and where we're going next. So I'd like to start by turning to Minister Kuntoro, taking on the chair, to really ask, what for you has been the most significant achievement to date of the Open Government Partnership?
It's unbelievable that now we have 61 countries as a member, as so many CSOs as a member in this movement. And this is a remarkable, excellent job by my dear friend Francis Mott. And this is something that we have to sustain, we have to maintain this. 61 countries, 1/3 of the whole country population in the world. That is really something. Okay? In just 2 years' time, at the beginning, it's only 8 countries and 9 CSOs. So we have to maintain this momentum. But as I already mentioned in several events, that the quantity, although it's very important, but the more important one is basically the word by Francis Mott was deepening. My term is the quality of this partnership that should be improved. And that's why we have so many things in our work plan for the coming 1-2 years ahead to improve the quality. Basically, 61 is very difficult for us to evaluate one by one how far have they improved things in their own country. Whether there is any significant progress or it's just still the same as 2 years ago or maybe 1 year ago. That's the real challenge that we are facing now. But getting 61 country member and so many CSOs, that is something that's really remarkable.
And Minister, given that it's just you and I talking with a few friends, are there any things that have not gone as you'd hoped?
Well, sharing of this experience. I believe that, well, every country have its own tradition, have its own political system, have its own culture, have its own structure, have its own problem. They may come up with something new, something that is really different than before. And maybe some other countries will adopt this approach. We don't have yet the mechanism on how to share this experience from one to another. We are sitting on a very rich asset of experiences. The real challenge now is how do we share this? How do we promote this? So that's why launching the OGP award is one of the mechanisms, because by having that, at least all of us will look to 1, 2, 3 best innovation that come up from all these countries. But that's not enough. Everybody, every country, every CSOs, if they need something, they can go to a kind of library and get something from that library and then implement that in their own country.
Great, thank you very much. Rakesh, you're joining as the civil society partner in the Open Government Partnership. What for you is your most important goal over the next year?
I think two things are really important. Let me start with is the quality, as Pakuntoro said, the quality of our engagement. I think some really incredible things have happened in the last short 2 years. But the big challenge now for that huge advance, 61 countries, 1,000 commitments, and so on, to get traction is to focus on the quality. And that's the quality of the engagement between civil society and government. It's the quality of the delivery. And particularly, the metric that matters to me most, I think, is what does that mean in people's lives? Because as several people have said in this conference, most people out there don't really care about open government for its own sake. They want to see what is open government, what does that mean if I'm a mother and I'm trying to get care for myself, for my child, what does that mean in real terms? That's the metric that is really important, and the quality of that metric that matters. And then finally, I think the independent reporting mechanism is one of the most unique and powerful aspects of the Open Government Partnership. I don't think it's perfect yet. I think we've learned that there are certain process issues. And yet, it's remarkable that we've managed to do a report, independent review of this 8 countries. We have for the next 39 countries underway. We have an incredible team that's running it. And this is really powerful because of the earlier point you made about feedback. It really holds a mirror up to us. It gives us a reality check and creates, I think, a very robust mechanism to let us know whether our commitments are actually working, whether the rubber is hitting the road.
Thank you. Minister Olivas, you're joining the leadership of this partnership. For those of you who don't speak Spanish, put your headphones on and get into channel 2, I think, on the headphone. You're joining this partnership. I wonder what for you is going to be the most important goal of the next year.
Una de las principales metas que debemos proponernos en este ejercicio que empieza es el de la cooperación entre los países. Creo que los 61 países que ya están sumados a esta iniciativa deben tener una mayor cooperación entre ellos y sobre todo destacar la cooperación sur a sur que se debe de dar e ir también ampliando el ingreso de los países que aún están fuera de esta iniciativa.
And if I can pick up Minister Kuntoro's point about deepening the partnership, so yes, more cooperation among governments, but how do you learn from one another? Is there anything that you've learned over the last day and a half that was new, or tell us about a lesson that has come out of it for you, or do you feel that this has been more just getting to know the people involved?
Bueno, han sido dos puntos muy importantes. Por un lado, lo que ya se señalaba, el elevar la calidad de la información que llega a los ciudadanos. Y por otro lado, creo que debemos de profundizar de manera muy importante, de manera muy destacada, la utilidad de la información que llega a los ciudadanos. Si la información que los gobiernos abren hacia sus ciudadanos no es útil, creo que no estaremos cumpliendo con uno de nuestros objetivos principales. Y creo que acompañando esta utilidad, en algunos de nuestros países tenemos que redoblar los esfuerzos para transmitir lo que es gobierno abierto y que la gente se vaya sumando y vaya conociendo. Si no, serán únicamente acciones aisladas que no tendrán beneficio en la colectividad de nuestras naciones.
And Minister Kuntoro, just coming back to you a moment, Minister Olivas is highlighting the importance of good quality information, of having ways to disseminate it. Have you learnt something in the last day and a half about how to do that better?
Well, basically, there are so many things happening in the past 2 days. I got so many inspiration. Open data, for instance, that is really special. Okay? The initiative taken by the UK government some years ago to set up this Open Data Institute, that is something that's really very valuable for a big country like Indonesia. Data, some will say the data is just statistics, but may I include in this data as maps, informations, laws. That is really important for us. By having this, two things will happen. The understanding of the common people about things that they don't know yet. The second thing is you educate those people on how to make use of the map, of the data, to improve your welfare. And this is something that's really important. To my surprise, there's a working group, legislative working group. It's unbelievable for me because usually parliamentarians, they want to keep distance with the executive. They want to keep distance from all the other institutions. But being part of this OGP, that is really remarkable. So these are things that I learn from this, and from time to time, I always learn from this kind of event. But this event is just once a year event. We have to find another mechanism such that we can share all of this without having this expensive forum, once a year forum, gathering of 1,200 people, and maybe more than that. We cannot afford to do that. We have to find a way to share this information internationally or domestically. If we can have that automatically, this drive to have new approaches will take place automatically.
So Sunita Kaimal from the Revenue Watch Institute, you are a global non-governmental organisation. What's your hope in this regard? All your fellow panellists are talking about the need to disseminate and genuinely learn, not just be part in name of a grand partnership, but really get down and learn and start applying things. What's your hope for this coming year?
So one of the things that I think is most compelling about the Open Government Partnership is that it does enshrine this social contract between governments and citizens. And my organization, the Revenue Watch Institute, does work with countries that have abundant natural resource wealth but are often suffering from conflict or corruption or poverty. And part of the reason for this is that the tremendous revenues from oil, gas, and mining skew the social contract between citizens and governments. Unlike taxation, the revenues that are coming in are not generated by the citizens, and so therefore the traditional contract between citizen and government needs to be somehow reset. I think the ambition of Revenue Watch within the Open Government Partnership is to take advantage of this framework of making sure that governments and citizens are working together to determine the future of their countries.
But I'd like to come to each of you. I'd like to come back to each of you and say, how can the Open Government Partnership over the next 2 years really help you to achieve what each of you has said is very important? Because some of the audience might be thinking, well, hold on, you could get on with that yourselves. So how is it that this grouping, that this getting together, this partnership can help you to achieve that? Minister Kuntoro, would you like to start?
Well, for instance, we introduced the lapor system here. The lapor is basically, in English, is to report. An instrument in which, well, basically it's a complaint handling mechanism, but not just complaining, okay, because there'll be some reaction coming from the government. there will be some improvement coming from the government. That is something that is really simple. All citizens that have some problem with their irrigation, with their housing, with roads, bridges, can complain through this mechanism. And at the central government, we transmit this to the relevant ministries or agencies to continue to react on that and to do some correction or improvement or do some new construction. And the loop will be complete once that's done, and then the people who were complaining is already satisfied. That system, I heard that a number of countries wants to adopt this. This is a very simple approach, but we don't need this kind of forum for every time we have to introduce a new system, right? There should be a new way on how doing this. You have some other new mechanism that we see that's very attractive for us. For sure, we are going to come to you and have your support in implementing this in my country. So this kind of partnership, bilateral partnership in a buddy system like this will be very effective, I believe. And that is one thing that we have to promote.
But is it only from learning from each other, or does coming together like this raise the bar? Does it increase the expectations?
We need this kind of forum to raise the bar. So although we have a new approach in sharing all these experiences, but still we need this kind of to raise the bar. Because from time to time we have to raise all these bars. The starting point can be different from one country to another, from one area to another, can be different. But as long as we have the same goal to achieve, then actually things are moving. Now the question is, how fast are we moving? So we don't debate whether you're starting at point 1 or point 2 or point 5, it doesn't matter. As long as we have the same direction and we can measure the speed in trying to achieve that objective.
Rajesh, what do you think? What for you is the importance of the OGP to what you've been doing for a long time? So what difference can it make?
It gives us a platform to do things that is unprecedented. It puts government and civil society in the same space. It creates a situation where it is now in your interests to collaborate to get things done more effectively. I think it puts an onus on civil society to help craft the solutions together with government instead of just saying that things are not working. And it really puts the onus on governments to deliver. I mean, I think the beauty, again, I'm repeating an earlier point, the beauty of the OGP is that it's, as Minister Maud emphasized, it's not a walk, it's not a picnic. You make a plan and we have this wonderful inspiration, but then you got to deliver. Yeah. And what it does is gives civil society in many of our countries a whole new reference point, a whole new opportunity to say, look, in front of the world, you committed to do A, B, and C. You have no excuse not to get it done. The resources are there, the technical know-how is there, the need is there. So let's make it happen. And what it does that to me I think is really powerful is it changes the incentives on government leaders as well as civil society leaders to actually focus on getting traction and delivery. And that's why I think looking forward, what is going to be really important for us is to focus on delivery. We are 2 years old, and rightly so in this 2 years, it was a time for conceptualization, figuring out how OGP will work, getting a whole very impressive community of governments and civil society and others involved. That's terrific. But all of that is quite frankly going to go up in smoke if we are not able to tell stories 2 years from now about real differences that have been made in countries.
Let me ask you, what is it that CSOs have to learn from this process about how to work? You've said this is great because we're on the same platforms as governments. So governments are having to learn to deal with you on the same platform. But what is it that you have had to learn over the last year about how to work with governments and craft solutions with them? that's different to what you previously did?
Well, I think it makes you, first you better appreciate that governments are not monolithic. They have the same contestations among them that we have within civil society. You have reformers and you have people who are retrogressive. Reformers may have the great ideas, but it's about how do you get them to move and how do they support, how do you support them to move? You also have to realize something that's personally very difficult for me as to where you make compromises, where you have to let go of some things in order to achieve other things. And it's also about realizing that to watch out not to be too co-opted. Because I think simultaneously in the OGP, civil society organizations have two roles. One is to hold the government's feet to the fire. And I don't think we should not give up that role. That is part of our role. But at the same time, we need to understand what is the space for collaboration, and what are the deals you can strike, and what are the tactics you use in order to move things forward. And I think what you find is some people have an inside role, some people have an outside role, and part of our job is to actually broker those two roles between insiders and outsiders. A huge part of civil society's role within OGP will be to listen very carefully to the skeptics. We need to find, not only civil society, governments in OGP need to find ways to listen to the skeptics out there who have criticisms, because only when we listen carefully will OGP become more sharper and more effective.
Good, thank you. Minister Olivas, you gave us an agenda both for cooperation among states and for open data and open government within Mexico. But what is it that the Open Government Partnership can do specifically to help take forward that agenda?
Bueno, yo creo que debe de haber una comunicación permanente con todos los países miembros, porque habrá temas de apertura de datos que son generales para todos los países y hay otros temas que por la idiosincrasia de los países, por la situación especial de cada uno, solamente se podrán aplicar en algunos de estos países. Yo pongo el ejemplo de algo que vamos a incorporar en nuestro plan de acción para los próximos 2 años, que es tener un portal para el apoyo que se está dando a las comunidades de nuestro país que se vieron afectadas por los 2 ciclones que nos llegaron por las 2 costas en nuestro país, un fenómeno que tenía muchos años de no presentarse en México y que afectó a varias de las entidades federativas de nuestro país. Hemos establecido un portal para dar a conocer cuáles son los recursos de carácter federal que se van a aplicar en estos estados y en específico a cada uno de los municipios, saber cuáles van a ser las entregas en especie que se va a dar a esta comunidad para que la comunidad tenga la oportunidad de conocer cómo les va a llegar los recursos, y adicionalmente estamos abriendo una parte de ese portal para recibir quejas y denuncias por parte de la ciudadanía cuando esos recursos no fluyan en la cantidad y la calidad o que no se lleguen a presentar como ha ocurrido en otros desastres naturales que hemos sufrido en nuestro país. Adicionalmente, tenemos una relación por parte del gobierno de todos los comités de Contraloría Social, que son los ciudadanos que reciben directamente estas obras de beneficio, reconstrucción de carreteras, construcción de viviendas, el establecer nuevamente la pavimentación de las calles, para que esos comités de Contraloría Social supervisen y vigilen cómo se va desarrollando la aplicación de estos recursos del gobierno. Esto nos permitirá tener una relación directa entre el gobierno y la ciudadanía. Y ahí la ciudadanía obliga al gobierno a escuchar cuáles son sus reclamos y el gobierno a transparentar el manejo de los recursos.
But do you see the Open Government Partnership as a place that you can then come to hold another government to account for failing to be open, for failing to deliver this information, for failing to its communities? You know, might we see Mexico at the next Open Government Partnership perhaps criticising the British government for not doing enough in respect of commitments made?
Yo no le denominaría crítica. Yo creo que el programa donde debemos de centrarnos o el objetivo que debemos de determinar es hacer recomendaciones para mejorar. No es que alguien haya fallado y lo vayamos a criticar. Creo que la crítica es muy fácil. Eso lo puede hacer cualquier persona. Pero si somos una comunidad de países comprometidos con la apertura de datos, con los gobiernos abiertos, entonces lo que nosotros debemos de hacer en esas evaluaciones es hacer recomendaciones para hacer posible lo que no se pudo cumplir, para redoblar los esfuerzos y lograr los objetivos de la alianza. Si no logramos los objetivos de la alianza y nos dedicamos a criticar, creo que nos estaremos apartando de las finalidades principales de esta iniciativa.
Thank you. So, Sunita, Minister Olivas presents us an image of governments working within the partnership very constructively with one another, but Rakesh's view with the civil society is there in a way to be the critics. Is that your view of how this works? Is it for civil society to be holding governments to account and governments to be learning from one another? Is that how the Open Government Partnership should work?
Let me just step in and clarify one thing. I said we have a dual role.
Yes.
And it's getting the balance between the dual role right. It is to be critics and to collaborate.
Sure.
So
I was just picking up on the criticism piece.
Okay.
Yes,
Yes.
and absolutely. I think that it is a challenge for civil society, but one that we have to meet to both be actively engaged in the process and proactively engaged in that process, not just waiting for governments to come to us for ideas, but then also throughout that process, the advantage of OGP is that it does have a framework with timelines, with deadlines and reports, where then civil society can again play an active report in the monitoring, an active role in the monitoring of that process. But I have to say, I think that OGP as a partnership, we really need some dentures. We are missing our bite. We don't have any teeth. And I think that that is the next frontier for OGP in the coming years. It is part of the theory of change of OGP that countries should be part of this process, and through their participation in the process with a relatively low bar for eligibility, be able to make progress towards openness. But I think that we have seen that that openness is oftentimes coming with a contradictory closing of civil society space. And right now, OGP doesn't have mechanisms to be able to deal with that. It also doesn't currently have mechanisms to be able to work with governments when there are issues with the reports or there are issues with the national action plans. So to be able to ensure that there is this deeper level of engagement, that the countries do go further, we need to make sure that we have some mechanisms to give some teeth to OGP to preserve the integrity of it.
And what's the role that civil society can play towards that end? So in 1 year's time, reconvening this panel, what is it that you would want this room to hold you to account for in terms of what civil society can do to push that forward?
No pressure, right? So.
No pressure, no pressure.
Well, I think that there is a role for civil society to, first of all, put forward some ideas for eligibility criteria around civic space and the space that civil society has to engage. Right now, there's a very low bar, and the indicator does not often reflect the realities on the ground. I think there's a wealth of knowledge in this room about how to raise the ceiling for that criteria and to help governments make concrete commitments to be able to defend and expand the space for civil society engagement. I think we can also use the OGP framework, which does have a commitment to protecting civil society space, but also to mechanisms for improving and increasing collaboration. And what we need to do is better define what we mean by those mechanisms. So what does co-creation really mean in practice? Where has it been done very well, and we can take lessons from that? And where hasn't it, and what do we need to do to make sure that that condition doesn't persist?
Okay, so in 1 year's time, Rakesh, what should we be holding civil society to account for as a specific step towards making OGP work better?
I think we need to do real deep listening and demonstrate that we're doing that, and demonstrate that what we're hearing we take it seriously. You know, there are some serious questions. How come There are some countries who are eligible where atrocious things are happening, and as Sunita said, we don't know what we're doing. But also around the very practical issues of delivery. People have ideas on how to get that done. We need to be listening. There's not everything that we can take care of, but the things that we need to do on our part to get that right, we need to be listening very carefully. And I think sometimes the risk is that we can lose perspective. The risk is that we get so excited in our bubble that we lose sight of what's happening out there. And we need to institutionalize that rather than leave it ad hoc. And a year from now, if people are to ask us, what did you hear us say? What did you learn? And what did you do differently? We should have credible answers to those questions.
Minister Kuntoro, so in 1 year's time, OGP reconvenes. And what do you most hope to be able to say, this is what we've achieved during this year?
Indonesia is very consequent when joining OGP 2 years ago. Starting from that, the first time that we invite CSO to sit together with the government to set up a series of action plan in fighting corruption. I want that at the end of next year, more of countries can sit together with their CSO to set up their own national action plan, set up their priorities, something that this is really important, such that we can neutralize, minimize the always suspicious between government and CSO. And so, once it's there, although I support Rakesh's double function of CSO, but at least by sitting together, we can come up with a joint program that's good and for the benefit of the people.
Thank you, Minister Kuntoro. And Minister Olivas, in 2 years' time, at the end of your term chairing the Open Government Partnership, what do you hope to be sitting here or sitting in Mexico City saying that the OGP has achieved? What would you hope would be a tangible success?
Yo creo que el poder acreditar en los hechos que las organizaciones de la sociedad civil y el gobierno han hecho su trabajo y que esto se refleja en la satisfacción de la ciudadanía. El lograr que la ciudadanía no nos rebase a ambos, porque al final del día somos un grupo conjuntado en objetivos comunes. Y si nosotros logramos mejorar la transparencia, logramos mejorar la rendición de cuentas y logramos en algunos casos erradicar la corrupción, creo que nos podremos sentir satisfechos y los índices que miden esto a nivel internacional nos demuestran que la ciudadanía de nuestros países, de nuestras comunidades, así lo están manifestando. Creo que estaremos muy satisfechos de llegar en esos 2 años a rendir esos resultados.
Thank you very much. I think from today's panel, we've seen a real agreement that this is a valuable platform, that it's a platform both within countries to bring civil society and government, which every one of the panelists here is wanting to make happen even more, and a platform for governments to come together. There's a definite urge to share practices across all the partners in the Open Government Partnership. I think there's a little bit of a difference of view over who should hold whom to account and whether this is a partnership in which that should go on, about whether this is a learning partnership where you're learning lessons about how to be held to account in your own countries, or whether this is the partnership where peers hold one another to account. And I think the next year will doubtless provide a little bit of both, and that's a very creative tension for the Open Government Partnership to take forward. But with that said, can I ask you all to thank the participants today before I ask Rajesh and Sunita to move us to something a little different. So thank you to the panelists.
All right. You know that some of you saw me high-five my president yesterday, and so you might think we are really best buddies. But you should know that actually my reputation in my own country is to cause a lot of embarrassment for some important people. So in keeping to that tradition, Sunita and I have decided to do some embarrassment here. Now, starting first, this is an open government partnership that involves government and civil society. And if you are in one of those steering committee meetings that we have in beautiful places like Lancaster House, so when you should see the tags on the tables. So when I'm sitting there, it says Rakesh Rajani, or Warren says Warren Krafchick, and there's me there, and there's a few empty chairs behind me. But when Francis Maud is sitting there, he has a phalanx of about 17 people writing things for him and assisting him and doing almost everything but putting sugar in his tea to help him do that. Sometimes they do that too. So who makes civil society work? Because if this is an equal partnership, what has made civil society be able to, I think, play a huge role? And I think it's many of us. I think it's the civil society members of the steering committee, the civil society members active in the countries. But this moment we want to highlight one person, Paul Masson. So where is Paul? Can Paul come up? We'll do the prizes together.
Okay.
We'll do the prizes at the end.
Yeah.
This guy is an incredible person. You might not see him often. He doesn't make fancy speeches. He doesn't get to be up on stage as much, but he really makes civil society work. So I think he's incredible, and I'd like us to give him a big hand once more. Stay here. All right, and this operation, as you can see, has pulled this conference off. We have 61 countries. I won't repeat all the things. It's an impressive operation, and Francis Maud took away my thunder line. The huge secretariat that it has involves 3 people, and it's headed by Linda. So Linda Fry, if you can come up here. You should try to compare the staff that the UN Secretary General has with Linda. And as far as effectiveness, I don't know. It's a hard call sometimes between the two. Linda's up on stage, but she works with Joe and Jack. So can we just have Joe Powell and Jack Mahoney? Can you wave your hands from wherever you are? And a big hand. So after that dream team, the person who's been a friend, a mentor, and a real key inspiration in making this work, I think it's hard for me to imagine how the Open Government Partnership would be where it is without Warren Krafchick. Warren Krafchick. I don't need to say more about Warren. I think you know what a rock star is. And finally, look, maybe this is safe now to confess that, I grew up in socialist Tanzania. I'm a lefty guy as they come. So the idea of Tories was for me kind of a weird idea. I thought Tories, And so I have all kinds of conceptions about the Conservative Party in the UK. And my neat notion of that has been completely messed up after meeting Francis Maud. He's an incredible guy. So Francis Maud, I'm even hugging a Tory. Listen, I've learned so much from Francis. I've learned so much around his political skills, around thinking through. He's a terrific listener about how to get things done, about being strategic, about caring on deep values. It's been an honor to work with this incredible team here. So can we all just give a big hand to this team? Now, other than thanking them, we wanted to give them a gift. Now, how do you give these incredible people a gift that's commensurate with what they've done? So in true OGP fashion, we formed a committee, subcommittee, that's been working very hard, has been meeting for months and months, and we think we've finally got this right. And if you think of it, these are people who are very grounded, very rooted. They have their feet firmly planted on the ground. But a lot of them, we've also had to hold their feet to the fire. So if you look at their feet, they're kind of disguised. But if you look at their feet, they need some real help and protection going forward. So with that in mind, Sunita, and to present these very, very special gifts.
So first of all, to Paul, we have a pair of socks with a bridge on it because he is the bridge helping us build bridges between civil society and government. To Paul. For Linda, another pair of socks. Are you sensing the theme here yet? It says, keep calm and carry on, because that is what she does, and we are so grateful to you for it. Now, to Warren and to Minister Maud, I have to say, I know that London will always have a very special place in your hearts, and now will have a special place on your feet as well. And may this protect you. As civil society is holding your feet to the fire, you'll have a little bit more of a barrier. Thank you all so much.
And now this is positively my last appearance. I'm conscious that I'm the only thing standing between a room full of people, gratifyingly still a room full of people, and the bar, the airport, the hotel, whatever. But I just want to start with some more thanks. First of all, to the volunteers, all of those people in purple shirts you've seen around from around the... They're from all around the government. They've been cheerful throughout. They've been fantastic. They've done it in their own time. Thanks, guys, very much indeed. Second, to my Cabinet Office team who've made all this happen. They've worked tirelessly and through some stress along the way, not all of it caused by me. And I just want to say to you, thank you very much indeed. You may think I'm an ungrateful bastard, but I'm not. Well, I'm not ungrateful anyway. These are some of the very best civil servants I've ever worked with. Thanks to you all, you can take the weekend off. So, over 1,000 delegates from civil society, business and government, you gathered to discuss practical ways in which transparency can empower citizens and help them reduce corruption, create inclusive economic growth and prosperity, engage civil society. Many more, it's clear, have been able to and have followed and contributed to our discussions online, and the world's been watching and learning from our experience. This week, Sierra Leone's parliament passed a landmark freedom of information law and consequently became the newest country eligible to join the OGP. So, it gives me real pleasure to announce the co-chairs have received Sierra Leone's letter of intent to join. So yesterday there were 61 of us, now there are 62. And more to come. Other countries who've participated in the summit have been learning what the OGP is all about. We look forward to being joined by Côte d'Ivoire, whose Prime Minister yesterday announced that they'd work towards eligibility by the end of next year. I know that colleagues here from Morocco, from Senegal, from Nigeria and other countries who've been undergoing significant reform and are working towards joining our numbers soon. Earlier this year, I visited Burma, which is using its commitment to join the OGP when it's eligible as a tool to guide reform and to support the reformers. Reformers of the world unite. The OGP is your friend. I know that there are other interested countries among us. I hope we'll be able to continue working with you. Every new commitment we agreed represents a significant step towards more open and transparent government. Here in the UK, we yesterday announced plans to create a publicly accessible central registry of information on beneficial ownership. From today, Companies House is releasing machine-readable data on the details of company accounts that are filed with them, which is part of our newly announced national information infrastructure. This company data will be free, open, and updated daily. That's how open government should be working. It's often said that within the OGP, the good ideas come from everywhere. We've been absolutely proving that to be the case. Other OGP member countries have made further pledges, a wide range of priorities, opening up government data, fighting corruption, greater fiscal transparency, further empowerment. Ireland, Spain, Panama pledged to sign up to the Open Data Charter. Tanzania developing a new Right to Information Act. Mexico working to ensure transparency and accountability in national disaster relief expenditure. Albania reforming its public administration recruitment service. Estonia creating a database of financial interest to prevention of corruption and conflicts of interest. Colombia fighting corruption through a reporting mechanism for the participation of the private sector in identifying, preventing and prosecuting corruption. The Czech Republic adopting an act on civil servants to ensure depoliticization, professionalization and stabilization of public administration. Costa Rica developing an OGP policy, open government policy for the judiciary. Armenia developing an electronic mining database. Just a snapshot. In total, we've received around 40 brand new commitments during the summit. It shows what can be achieved, and I hope everyone, governments and civil society alike, will go home and get involved with their national action plan processes. I know there are 39 countries in the second cohort of membership who are just beginning their second action plans next week. I hope they'll capture the ambition that we've seen here, the ambition to go from strength to strength. We've seen so much great content, substantive content, over the last couple of days. Presidents and their civil society counterparts having an open discussion very publicly, even if the president said he was condemned to do it. It seemed a bit harsh to me, but I love our civil society in the UK. I don't feel at all condemned. We're having a government having their feet genuinely held to the fire, socks or no socks. I've been around for the whole summit, and yet there's a huge amount I didn't get to see. I know how much there's been done. The partnerships yesterday with the leading multilateral organizations, IADB, OECD, UNDP, World Bank, really important to take us and support OGP implementation at the country level. We've begun the development of working groups to bring together the things we know are working around the world, to continue to share those ideas and drive it all forward. This summit represents the culmination of a transformative year for the Open Government Partnership. On the basis of what we've achieved together in London, I'm confident that in a year we'll be celebrating delivering the commitments we agreed here. We'll be welcoming even more members inspired by what they've seen, and we'll be using the summit's achievements as a basis for moving forward in exciting new ways. So thank you. Thank you to all of you for coming, for being part of this, and for making it what I believe has been a huge success. For Warren and myself, this is our swan song. Warren, it's been such a pleasure to work with you. From the very outset, you've been there. The OGP would not be what it is without your commitment. You've been there, inspirational, practical, committed, imaginative, authoritative, in finding ever new ways to make this unique partnership succeed. The whole community owes you such a great debt of gratitude. Thank you. We're both really pleased to be handing the OGP over to the capable charge of the incoming chairs you've just seen and heard from, and we look forward to continuing to work with them. In a moment, you'll see a short video which wraps up the highlights of the last 2 days, and I'm just going to say it one more time. Transparency, it's an idea whose time has come. Thank you.